There is something you do that almost no one else knows about. You go back inside conversations, not to remember them, to run them again. What you said, what they said, the half second before their answer changed. You were in that conversation. You heard everything. But that wasn't enough, because your brain decided, quietly, without asking you, that the gap between what someone said and what they actually meant is exactly where things go wrong. And it's right. It learned that somewhere. It learned it early. By the end of this video, you'll understand why your brain does this, what it's been protecting you from, and why it's not a character flaw. It's evidence. This usually starts in a home where the emotional temperature was hard to predict. Not always a chaotic home. Sometimes the quietest homes are the hardest to read. A parent whose mood shifted without obvious cause. An environment where saying the wrong thing, even accidentally, had weight. So you started listening more carefully, not to the words, to the tone underneath the words, to the silence that felt different from other silences. Bessel van der Kolk documented how the brain responds to chronic unpredictability by strengthening the amygdala's threat detection pathways. The brain stops waiting for danger to arrive. It begins scanning for it before it shows up. Conversation replay is one of the ways it scans after, checking the recording for signals it missed the first time. You are not overthinking. You are doing exactly what your nervous system was shaped to do. You are not broken. You are calibrated. The environment that required this calibration may no longer exist, but the calibration is still running. The first sign is that you remember conversations with unusual precision. Not every conversation, the ones where something felt off, or the ones that mattered. You remember exact phrasing, the word they chose instead of a different word. The thing they started to say and didn't finish. Other people who were in the same room will remember it differently. You know what was actually said. Memory researchers have documented how emotional arousal at the moment of an experience intensifies how the brain encodes it. Your prefrontal cortex held onto details that other brains let dissolve by morning. This started because precision mattered. In a home where the mood could shift, the details weren't trivia. They were the difference between a calm evening and something harder. So you kept them. The cost right now, you carry these conversations long after the people in them have moved on. They forgot it happened. You are still in the recording room, and that precision connects to something even harder to sit with. The second sign is that you analyze tone more than content. You know this feeling. Someone sends you a short reply when they usually write more. Your boss ends an email without her usual sign-off. A friend who always responds in an hour takes 4. You notice. You don't decide to notice. It just registers. Picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon, completely ordinary, and someone who usually says, "Sounds good," sends back, "Okay." That's it. One word. And something in you is already asking whether that word is different from the last one. You are not reading into things. You are reading things. There is a difference. This is what psychologists call hypervigilance, a state of chronic baseline activation in the nervous system's threat detection system. Peter Levine described how this develops not as a malfunction, but as an adaptation. In environments where what someone said and what they meant were consistently different, learning to track the gap becomes survival logic. The present-day cost is a specific kind of exhaustion that's hard to explain to anyone who doesn't experience it. You're not just listening to what someone says. You're running a simultaneous background process, tracking register shifts, monitoring micro changes, already anticipating the moment the tone moves. Most people have no idea they're doing any of this to you. That gap between what you're carrying and what anyone sees is its own kind of loneliness. Stop for a second. Everything you've heard so far, the replay, the precision, the tone reading, none of it is anxiety. It is not a thinking disorder. It is not a personality problem. It is the logical output of a nervous system that was given a very specific job and did it without failing once. The question isn't, why can't I stop this? The question is, what was I protecting myself from? And does that threat still exist? The third sign is that you go back to conversations searching for the moment you misread something, not because you did, but because once you missed a signal. And something happened, so the review has a job now. It's looking for the frame where things shifted before you caught it, the micro moment where someone's energy changed and you were still responding to who they were 3 seconds ago. Did I miss something? Was it the thing I said right before? Or earlier? This is your nervous system doing what researchers call anticipatory threat modeling, building a more detailed map of social risk so that next time you find the moment earlier. The ACE study by Felitti and Anda documented how early unpredictability produces exactly this pattern: intensive retrospective scanning as a form of future protection. It works. The cost is that you are reviewing a past conversation in order to prepare for a future one, which means you are not actually present in either. The fourth sign is that you replay conversations where nothing went wrong. Your chest isn't tight. It wasn't a hard conversation, but you're back inside it that night, running it again, checking it again. Not because something felt wrong, because the fact that nothing went wrong hasn't landed yet. When you grew up in an environment where calm was temporary, where safety wasn't something that stayed, your nervous system stopped treating stillness as a signal that things were okay. It started treating stillness as not yet dangerous. A good conversation doesn't register as safe. It registers as a threat that hasn't arrived. Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory describes how the nervous system can remain in a state of chronic low-level activation even when the external environment is no longer threatening. Your body does not automatically know the rules have changed. It needs evidence it doesn't know how to receive. The fifth sign is that you struggled to release conversations where you said the wrong thing, not things that hurt someone, small things, a joke that landed slightly flat, a pause that went a half-second too long before you answered. And that night, or 3 days later, it surfaces again. The exact phrasing. The one that would have been better. Why did I say it like that? I should have just said, the loop runs because somewhere underneath it is a belief. If you review it enough, you can fix it retroactively. You cannot. But the belief that you could have managed the interaction more precisely, that a more precise version of you would have prevented something, is older than any specific conversation you're replaying right now. Alice Miller documented how children in high-stakes relational environments internalize responsibility for other people's emotional states. You didn't just learn to replay. You learned that your job was to manage the interaction well enough that no one would be disappointed. The sixth sign is that you are far more generous in your replays toward others than toward yourself. When you review what they said, you look for context, ways they may have been stressed, reasons they might not have meant it the way it landed. When you review what you said, the standard is completely different. You hold yourself to a precision that would be impossible for anyone. This is not self-esteem. It is a specific asymmetry that Lindsay Gibson described in her research on emotionally immature parenting. Children who were required to manage adult emotions became adults who still hold themselves responsible for outcomes they never controlled. You were a child doing a job no child should have had. The replay is proof of how hard you tried. When you put all of this together, something becomes clear. You go back inside conversations because your nervous system learned that missing something had consequences, because calm wasn't always safe, because at some point you were handed responsibility for reading a room that was genuinely beyond your ability to read, and you have been practicing ever since. You are not obsessive. You are someone who was trained to pay extraordinary attention in an environment that required it. You are allowed to stop reviewing conversations that have already ended. You are allowed to let a good interaction land without checking it twice. You are allowed to put down the responsibility for other people's emotional states, not because you've stopped caring, but because you were never supposed to carry that. You've been in that recording room long enough. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 6 signs felt most personal, not which one fits someone you know. Which one made you stop and reread it? I want to see who's here.